The Longest Trip Home is a story that is very close to my heart because it's about a family very close to my heart, my own. I was born in 1957, so I was growing up right in the middle of the turbulent 1960s and early 70s. There was the space program and the Vietnam War and the anti-war protest and the whole counterculture movement. And meanwhile, I'm growing up in this little suburban community on a lake outside of Detroit. In a real traditional Irish Catholic home with very devout and very traditional Catholic parents. So the clash of those two cultures was profound and often very funny, sometimes painful as well. I saw that pretty early as great fodder for writing. So I knew I wanted to write about my childhood, but it was really only after I entered middle age and I sort of had enough distance that I saw what the whole story was. And it wasn't just a childhood memoir. It was really a story that took me from childhood on this journey into adulthood and into that often painful process we all have to go through where we break free of our parents' orbit and find our own place in the world. I've been asked, how did I recall all these events that took place in my book, which covers a 40-year span? And that's a fair question. It's like when I wrote Marley Me, that was a 13-year span, all in my adulthood, and I was already working as a professional writer, and so I was in the habit of keeping journals and documenting aspects of my life. But for The Longest Trip Home, I didn't have that benefit because I wasn't keeping notes when I was a 6- and 7-year-old kid. But what I had was this rich oral tradition in my family. We used to sit around the dining room table, and mostly my mother would hold court. She was a great storyteller. Also, starting as a fairly young kid, like in high school, I did begin to write journals and to keep copies of letters. And so I had a paper trail, like from mid-high school forward, that really helped me write the second half of the book. And then I realized, after I lost my father in 2004, that the ending of the book was really the ending of that relationship. That, you know, I went home to see my dad when I knew he was very sick, and to say those things that I knew needed to be said. And so that's the journey of the book. That's the longest trip home. It's the journey out of childhood into adulthood, and then that final journey home to say the things you need to say to an aging parent.